Hello everybody, my name is Thibault Raffaillac. I am honored to be presenting for the first time at SIGCHI our work that is a collaboration with 4 agronomic institutes in France. The context of our work is pastoralism in the French Alps. As a reminder, pastoralism denotes the breeding of domesticated animals, here sheep, that are brought on large grasslands or pastures for grazing. During the last decades, pastoralism has been in increasing tension with 3 main factors. The first is climate change, that accelerates soil erosion, reduces water availability, and increases the frequency of forest fires. The second is the multi-use of mid-mountain areas with tourism, that generates conflicts of use and puts pressure on land prices. The third is the recent reappearance of wolves in the French Alps, that forced the reintroduction of guardian dogs called patous, which are known to be aggressive to tourists, wildlife, and hunters' dogs. In this context, a research initiative was started in 2022 to assist the local stakeholders in exploring the future of pastoralism through a process called territorial consultation. It gathered 10 researchers from very different disciplines, spanning social sciences, agronomy, and a fraction of computer scientists. The territory setting is called CCAPV in France. It spans 41 villages, an area 1/6 the size of the Hawaii island, and 11,000 inhabitants. In 2 years, we conducted 6 in-place workshops, 6 two-day research seminars, and 2 series of interviews during both summers. But first, let us define what is a consultation. The closest equivalent in English would be public participation. And to help refine this term, we refer to the excellent guide by Lasseur, which puts it on a scale of increasing public implication. Consultation sits above asking stakeholders for their opinion, and below making legal decisions with them. The premise is that involving stakeholders in collectively developing proposals can improve the support of those concerned and the efficiency of the measures taken. In practice, again from the Lasseur guide, an example process involves assessing stakeholders' perceptions of the project with surveys and power matrices, having stakeholders agree on a review of the situation by holding workshops with tools like mind mapping or participatory modeling, holding discussions during concerted foresight exercises with tools like computer simulations or role-playing games, and formulating collective commitments with debriefing sessions. So, we were invited initially as HCI practitioners because the collective needed an interface for a multi-agent simulation they were developing. That simulation would allow exploring with stakeholders the impact of various decisions, like which areas to graze would reduce the spread of forest fires. The problem was that the simulation had not been developed yet. So we had to guess what kind of computer programs could be used during consultations. And there were many unknowns. Do we make an interface to set up the simulation, to supervise it, to analyze its results? Where do we display it, and how will people interact with it? Who are the people who will be present and interact with the simulation? How will they be positioned in the room? In groups, one-on-one, speaker and audience? What will they do during a meeting? Sharing information, debating, voting? What is the expected outcome of a meeting? And so on. While trying to design a computer tool, we realized that its context of use was very vague among researchers. So we needed to clarify this first. We designed an 1.5-hour ideation workshop using cards, called Cards for Consultation. It featured 2 groups of 3 and 4 members of the research group, 5 decks with 38 cards in total. The participants would choose as many cards from the decks and arrange them freely on the table. We gave them this instruction: imagine all of the situations, meetings or events that we could be involved as researchers to accompany the stakeholders in the project. Something unusual is that we encouraged the participants to write on cards and to create new cards with blank cards. And the workshop finished with a synthesis by each group orally that we transcribed to text. Here is the consultation meeting imagined by one of the groups. In green, they selected the stakeholders that would be present and split them in 2 groups, managers and technicians versus local residents and users. In red, they specified what the people would do during the meeting, here sharing information, sharing feelings or memories, and debating. In orange, the supports that could be used to display information, possibly digital. Here they asked for cognitive maps and posters. In purple on the right, how people would be arranged in the room. Here, all around the table, then in subgroups, mixing both categories of stakeholders, then shuffling groups once, then all back in plenary. Then in blue on the left, the expected outcomes, which were having people express themselves, learn from each other, and identify issues to tackle for the following consultation process. Note that some of the finer details were not on the cards, but told at the restitution. So, thanks to the workshop, we helped clarify the nature of the future meetings. 2 months later, it's all good, we start working on a prototype, but then we realized that we still had no clue as to what kind of computer program we should design. So we made a new iteration of Cards for Consultation. This time, a 2-hour workshop with 2 groups of 4 members of the research team, 7 decks with a total of 81 cards, which is why they are now standing up. The instruction we gave them was to design a consultation meeting, this time narrowed specifically on visualizations, because we wanted to have practical options that we could start implementing very soon. The cards were still freely placed on the tables, could be created from blank cards, and were still writable. There was a reporting and discussion phase, and a post-workshop individual questionnaire. I won't have time to go through one of the proposals, but will rather share with you a few takeaways that we learned from this workshop and from our general experience with Cards for Consultation. Okay, the first takeaway is that cards are an original and useful method in interdisciplinary research. Indeed, after the first workshop, our colleagues were very interested in designing cards activities with stakeholders, which they did. On the middle and on the right, you can see pictures of 2 workshops that were conducted in the following months. Around the same time, we observed that the stakeholders had become surprisingly more open to discussing and listening, despite a very tense context. And that might have been helped by the originality of this method, which is rarely used there, to foster open mindsets. The second takeaway is that allowing participants to write on cards and place them at will helped them express more precisely what they wanted. On the left card, it was used to scrap notes. On the middle one, you can see that they rewrote the card label. And on the right, they rewrote the examples to stress them. Writing on cards was not systematic, about half of the cards on display, but when they did, the cards had more detailed explanations at the reporting phase. The third takeaway is that the choices of decks, cards, and instructions changed a lot between the 2 workshops. On the left and right are the results from both of our workshops. When looking for cards toolkits before designing Cards for Consultation, we could mostly find ready-made PDF files online. But here, we'd rather need vector files that we can edit, and many optional decks to pick from, because it is crucial to adapt the game to where we are in the project. The fourth takeaway that was explicitly discussed during the second workshop is that IT should be dismissible and non-distracting. The participants asked in particular that computer tools only occasionally supported meetings, not systematically. Here, I've put a picture of a workshop we conducted recently, where at that time we were holding discussions in subgroups without IT, yet later in the workshop we collectively built a mind map on the big screen at the back. So back at our previous question, what role can computer visualizations play in consultation meetings? We gave our participants many visualizations and sources of data to display, and they came up with very specific needs rather than a generic decision-making tool. They came up with 4 proposals for in-situ visualizations of simulations on top of maps or photographs, tools for exploring what-if scenarios with simulations, interactive knowledge maps for world cafes and subgroup activities, and ambient multisensory visualizations, because I found it fun if you could hear the barking of a patu chasing after you. The last takeaway is that our participants tended to design consultation processes rather than single meetings, that is a sequence of meetings and animations. Here, I've put an image from the second workshop, showing that one group put way more cards for activities in orange and visualizations in light blue than could possibly fit in a 3-hour meeting. Sometimes they were putting some cards aside and saying they would need them later. So this is one of the many extensions that we are considering for Cards for Consultation. With this, I would like to thank you for your kind attention. Here is my contact website if you want to reach me. You'll find more details on the protocol and results in the paper, and please write your questions in the chat so my future self will hopefully reply quickly.